human prince thought. The blind date was over, until the orc woman arrived to surprise him. Prince Dorian Fairhaven had learned 3 important lessons in the past week. First, his advisors had terrible taste in women. Second, desperation smelled like expensive perfume and fake laughter. Third, the human heart could die of embarrassment before the body caught up. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was supposed to be the last time he'd let High Steward Harlow arrange one of these disasters masquerading as diplomatic blind dates. The woman hadn't shown up. For 2 hours, Dorian sat alone at the corner table of the Silver Stag Tavern, nursing ale that had gone warm and pride that had gone cold, while every patron in the establishment pretended not to notice the prince being stood up. 2 hours. 120 minutes of watching Bridget the barkeep clean the same tankard 17 times, her nervous habit kicking in every time she glanced his way. 120 minutes of Lady Roslyn, his cousin, sending him sympathetic looks from across the room that somehow made everything worse. 120 minutes of knowing that tomorrow the entire court would hear about Prince Dorian waiting like a lovesick fool for a woman who valued him less than punctuality. He pulled out the broken compass from his pocket. The silver was tarnished now, the glass face scratched from years of being carried everywhere. His grandfather had given it to him the week before he died, pressed it into Dorian's 12-year-old hands and said, "This will always point you toward your true north." 2 weeks later, Dorian dropped it. The needle spun freely now, pointing nowhere and everywhere at once. He'd kept it anyway. Maybe because it was honest about being broken. Maybe because he understood the feeling. "I'm done," Dorian said to no one in particular, standing up. The chair scraped against stone floor with the sound of every failed expectation he'd ever carried. "I'm going back to the castle, and I'm telling Harlow that I'll marry a tree before I sit through another." The tavern door opened. It wasn't the gentle opening of someone who belonged. It was the kind of opening that happened when the person entering had never learned to do anything gently, or had learned and decided it wasn't worth the effort. The sound of wood hitting stone, of cold night air rushing in, of conversations stopping mid-word. She was green, not the pale green of spring leaves or the gentle green of summer grass. The green of deep forests where predators lived, of moss growing on ancient stones, of things that had survived too long to be soft. She stood in the doorway like someone who'd walked through 100 doors and kicked down half of them, scanning the room with eyes that had counted enemies before counting friends for so long it had become instinct. Vreka Stormfang was approximately the size of a problem that couldn't be ignored. She wore armor that had stories beaten into it, dents that spoke of blades deflected, scratches that whispered of claws narrowly avoided, one particular gouge across the shoulder plate that screamed of something Dorian probably didn't want to imagine. Her black hair was tied back in warrior braids decorated with small bones, and her tusks were carved with symbols that Dorian's education had never covered because knowing orc battle honors wasn't considered necessary for princes who stayed safely inside castle walls. Every human in the tavern had the same reaction. A slight tensing, a subtle shifting of weight, that instinctive calculation of how close the nearest exit was. Every orc in the tavern, there were 3, rough traders by the look of them, had a different reaction. Recognition. The kind of recognition warriors gave each other. The silent acknowledgement that said, "I know what you are, and I respect the hell out of it." Vreka's eyes found Dorian. Something in her expression shifted. Not softness. Gods, nothing about her was soft. But something that might have been recognition mixed with resignation, mixed with the particular exhaustion that comes from doing something you know is a terrible idea, but doing it anyway. She walked toward him. She didn't walk the way noble ladies walked, with that gliding grace that made them look like they were floating above the floor rather than touching it. She walked like someone who'd spent more time in war camps than ballrooms, whose body remembered how to carry weight over rough terrain, who'd never been taught to take small steps to appear delicate, and wouldn't have done it if she had been taught. The tavern watched. Bridget stopped pretending to clean the tankard. Lady Roslyn's mouth fell open in a way that would have been funny if Dorian's heart wasn't trying to escape through his throat. Vreka stopped at his table. Up close, she was even more imposing. She had scars crossing her arms like badges of honor, and her hands, gods. Her hands looked like they could crush stone and had probably crushed a few things harder than that. She wore a necklace of claws that Dorian desperately hoped weren't human. "You, Dorian?" Her voice had an accent that turned vowels into something rougher. consonants into small declarations of war, the common tongue shaped by a mouth that was built for a different language entirely. Yes, I'm Prince Dorian Fairhaven of Don't Care About Titles. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat. The chair complained, but held. You the one arranged with my clan for this, what you call it, blind date? She said the words like they tasted strange. Stupid name. Date not blind. Date right here. Can see everything fine. Dorian's brain had stopped working. Somewhere between you, Dorian, and sitting down, all his courtly training, all his practiced diplomatic responses, all his careful words designed to navigate difficult situations, all of it had simply evacuated his skull. You're the blind date? Rekka raised one eyebrow. It was a gesture that somehow conveyed an entire conversation. Obviously. Did you think I walked into this tavern for the ambiance? My brothers say your steward contact orc clans, Rekka said, leaning back in the chair with the casual confidence of someone who'd never worried about posture or propriety. Say peace treaty need strengthening. Say prince need wife. Say we consider proposal. She shrugged, an enormous gesture that involved shoulders built for swinging warhammers. I volunteer. Seemed interesting. Interesting. Dorian repeated the word like it was in a language he'd just learned. You thought meeting a human prince for a blind date would be interesting. More interesting than crushing bandits. Rekka caught Bridget's eye and held up 2 fingers. Ale. Strong kind, not human water drink. She turned back to Dorian. Besides, my brother annoy me for months. Vrekka, you 32? Need settle down. Vrekka, you spend too much time fighting, not enough time thinking about future. Vrekka, clan need alliances. Blah, blah, blah. She made a dismissive gesture. I tell him I do this. He stopped talking for at least month. Worth it. Bridget approached their table the way someone might approach a sleeping dragon, carefully, with escape routes planned. She set down 2 tankards. The one in front of Rekka was filled with something so dark it looked less like ale and more like a threat. The one in front of Dorian was another regular ale. I didn't... Dorian started. You need it. Rekka picked up her tankard. You look like man who've seen ghost, or worse, seen orc. There was something in her eyes when she said it. Not quite humor, not quite challenge. Something that understood exactly what seeing her walk through that door had done to every human assumption in his head. Dorian picked up the compass from the table where he'd left it. His fingers found the familiar weight of it, the smooth silver worn from years of anxious handling. Rekka's eyes tracked the movement. What that? Nothing, just... Dorian tried to put it away, but Rekka's hand shot out, not aggressive, just fast, and gently stopped him. May I see? He handed it over, expecting her to examine it with the same confusion most people did when they realized it was broken. Instead, she held it like someone who understood that broken things still had value. She turned it over in her hands, traced the tarnished engravings with one calloused finger, opened the face and watched the needle spin aimlessly. Broken, she said. Yes. But you keep it. Yes. Good. She handed it back. Broken things still work. Just work different. Compass that always point north tell you where go. Compass that point everywhere tell you truth. Path is yours to choose. She took a long drink of her ale. I like broken compass better. More honest. Dorian stared at her. In 12 years of carrying that compass, no one had ever said that. They'd offered to fix it. They'd asked why he kept carrying something useless. They'd given him new compasses. But no one had ever suggested that broken might be better. So, Vrekka set down her tankard and fixed him with a look that was entirely direct, completely without artifice. You want tell me why you look like man ready to run? Your steward arranged this. Peace treaty benefit both kingdoms. I am... She searched for the word. Respectable warrior. Strong alliance. Good fighter. Excellent cook. Nobody believe but is true. I know 17 ways to kill man with bare hands, but also know 17 ways to season rabbit. Balance. Despite everything, despite the absurdity, despite his racing heart, despite every instinct screaming that this was wrong. Wrong, wrong. Dorian laughed. It wasn't a polite court laugh. It was the kind of laugh that came from somewhere deep, the kind that happened when reality became so ridiculous that your body had no other response. It hurt his chest and cleared his head and made Vrekka's expression shift into something that might have been satisfaction. I thought you weren't coming, Dorian said finally. I thought I'd been stood up for the third time this week. Third time? Vreka looked genuinely surprised. What wrong with human women? You prince, you... She gestured vaguely at him. Not ugly. Have all teeth. Not smell bad. Own castle. Seem decent. Why they... Understanding crossed her face. Oh, they want perfect prince from songs. You want no secret? What? Perfect prince from songs is boring. Perfect prince never make mistakes, never doubt. Never sit in tavern looking like world ended because broken compass remind him of something real. She leaned forward. You know what we say in Orc clans? We say, Gathmar Oke Thrawn. Strongest steel forged in hottest fire. Perfection is cold, never tested. Breaks first time, real pressure comes. Lady Rosalind appeared at their table like materialized judgment. Dorian, she said in the tone she used when she was about to say something that was technically polite but actually an attack. I wasn't aware you were expecting company. Lady Rosalind, Dorian said, finding his diplomatic voice finally. This is Vreka Stormfang. She's my... We're on a... This is the blind date. Rosalind's eyes widened, then narrowed, then went through approximately 17 other expressions that would take a scholar to catalog. The blind date. With an orc. Problem? Vreka asked pleasantly. But there was something in the way she said it that suggested she knew exactly what problem there was, had heard all the problems before, and was politely inviting Rosalind to be the one who said it out loud so everyone could acknowledge who the real problem was. Rosalind looked at Dorian, looked at Vreka, looked at the entire tavern that was pretending not to watch while absolutely watching, made a decision that Dorian could see happening in real time. She was going to tell everyone. How unexpected, Rosalind said. I'll let you two get back to your evening. She turned and walked directly toward the group of ladies she'd been sitting with, her spine radiating the particular energy of someone who had gossip that would reshape the social landscape. She's going to make this difficult, Vreka observed. She's going to make this impossible. Impossible good. Impossible mean worth doing. Vreka finished her ale in one long drink. You know what your problem is, Prince? I have a feeling you're going to tell me. You spend too much time thinking about what others think you should do. Not enough time thinking about what you want to do. She stood. The entire tavern's attention shifted. So, what you want to do? Run back to castle? Pretend this never happened? Let Steward find you nice human lady who never challenge you? Or you want something different? Dorian looked at the broken compass in his hand. He looked at Vreka Stormfang, who was the least appropriate, most impossible, completely wrong choice his advisors had ever presented him with. He looked at his life stretching before him. Years of appropriate choices, suitable marriages, diplomatic alliances that benefited everyone except the people actually living them. I want, he said slowly, surprised by the certainty in his own voice, to not make the safe choice for once. Vreka grinned. Her tusks made it look more intimidating than it probably was meant to be, but her eyes held something that might have been respect. Good answer, Prince. Now we see if you mean it. The next 3 weeks were the most interesting and terrifying of Dorian's life. Vreka didn't court like a human. She didn't send flowers or write poetry or arrange chaperone strolls through gardens. She showed up at the castle training grounds at dawn and said, "You fight?" When Dorian admitted he'd had some training, she handed him a practice sword and proceeded to absolutely demolish every defense he had, then spent 2 hours teaching him how to actually hold the damn thing properly. "You fight like man afraid of breaking fingernails," she said, repositioning his grip for the dozenth time. "Sword is extension of body. You trust body or you trust sword?" Both? Wrong answer. You trust yourself. Sword just tool. Tools break, tools rust, tools get lost. Self don't. She invaded council meetings because someone need make sure advisors not all cowards. She ate at the high table in the great hall and ignored the stares, the whispers, the way High Steward Harlow kept pinching the bridge of his nose like he had a headache that had gained consciousness. She walked through the castle gardens and pointed out 17 different plants that were technically poisonous, then explained which ones made better poisons because useful knowledge for prince who have enemies. But she also sat with Dorian in the castle library late at night, when the stone walls held silence better than judgment, and asked him about books, about which stories he loved as a child, about what his grandfather had told him when he gave him the compass. "He said it would point me to my true north," Dorian said one night, turning the compass over in his hands, "that no matter where I was, I'd always know which direction to go. And when it broke, I felt lost. Brecca was quiet for a moment. The library candles flickered, casting shadows that made her seem even larger, even more imposing. Then she said, "I tell you something. My mother died when I was young, in battle. Honorable death, clan say. Great warrior, clan say. But to me, she just gone. My brother raised me. He tell me, be strong like mother, be warrior like mother, honor her memory. So I train, I fight, I become exactly what everyone expect. But someday I realize I don't know what I want, only know what others want from me. I am great warrior, never lose fight. Clan respect me, but I am." She searched for words, empty inside, like armor with no person wearing it. Dorian understood that feeling better than he wanted to admit. Then one day, Brecca continued, "I fight chieftain from another clan. He winning, I am losing, and I realize I'm happy. First time in years I'm happy. Because I'm losing, nobody expect anything. Pressure gone, just me, just fight, just moment." She smiled, but it was a complicated expression. "I win fight anyway. Can't help it, training too good. But I learned something. I learned that I've been chasing what others want so long. I forget to chase what I want. What do you want? Still figuring out?" She looked at him, and there was something raw in her expression, something vulnerable that didn't fit with the warrior image at all. "But I know this. I don't want life where I do everything right, but feel nothing real. Better to be broken and real than perfect and empty." The broken compass felt heavier in Dorian's hand. 3 weeks after that first meeting, High Steward Harlow called an emergency council session. Dorian knew what was coming before he walked into the chamber. The faces of his advisors said everything: concern, disapproval, and that particular expression of people who were about to do something they believed was for his own good. "Your Highness," Harlow began, using Dorian's title like a weapon, "the council has discussed the situation with the orc woman. Her name is Rekka. The situation with Rekka Stormfang," Harlow amended, without warmth. "And we have come to a unanimous decision. This association must end. Association. Your Highness, please understand. We arranged the blind date program with the best intentions, to strengthen diplomatic ties, to show goodwill between our peoples. We never expected," he gestured vaguely, "this. We expected a formal meeting, perhaps a diplomatic friendship, not whatever this has become." "And what has this become?" Dorian asked quietly. Harlow looked at the other council members, drew strength from their nodding heads. "You are falling for her. And Your Highness, with all respect, that is impossible." There was that word again. Impossible. "The people will never accept an orc princess," another advisor added. "The noble houses will revolt. The trade agreements will dissolve. Everything we've built for generations will what?" Dorian stood. The broken compass in his pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Will crumble because I chose someone real over someone suitable? Will collapse because I'm tired of living a life that looks perfect but feels empty? Your Highness, do you know what she told me last night?" Dorian's voice was rising, and he couldn't stop it, didn't want to stop it. "She told me that in orc culture they have a saying, Gathmar OK Throne, strongest steel forged in hottest fire. She said perfection is cold, never tested, breaks first time real pressure comes." He looked at each advisor in turn. "I've spent my entire life being the perfect prince, doing the right things, making the safe choices, and I have never felt more broken than when I'm trying to be perfect." "Then, perhaps," Harlow said gently, which somehow made it worse, "you need time, distance, a chance to think clearly, without the influence of someone who sees me as a person instead of a title." The chamber fell silent. Dorian pulled out the broken compass, set it on the council table. "My grandfather gave me this, told me it would point me toward my true north. It broke, and I kept carrying it, because broken felt more honest than working. Brecca understood that in 5 minutes. None of you have understood it in 12 years. Your Highness," Harlow said, and there was genuine pain in his voice now. "We understand more than you know. We understand that you're young, that you're lonely, that the weight of the crown is heavy. But this path you're considering, it will hurt you more than being alone ever could. Maybe," Dorian picked up the compass, "or maybe the only thing that will hurt more is spending my entire life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to try." He left the council chamber, walked directly to the guest quarters where Rekka was staying. found her sitting on a bench that was entirely too small for her, sharpening a knife with the focused attention of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. She looked up, saw his expression, set down the knife. "They want me to end this," Dorian said. Brecca nodded slowly. "Expected. I am—" She searched for words. "Not good choice. I know this. You know this. Everyone know this. You're the most honest person I've ever met. Honest and good choice, not same thing. I know." They sat in silence for a moment. The knife lay between them on the bench, half sharpened, catching the light. "I tell you something," Brecca said finally. "In my clan, we have tradition. When young warrior come of age, they go on trial. Walk into wild alone, no weapons, no food, survive 7 days. Prove worth." She picked up the knife, turned it over in her hands. "Most survive, come back proud, but some don't come back. Wild claims them. Why are you telling me this? Because sometimes proving worth mean dying. Sometimes mean living different than expected." She looked at him. "You walk into wild now, Dorian. Your court is wild. Your people is wild. Your own fear is wild. Question is, you survive and come back same, or you survive and come back changed? What if I can't come back at all? Then maybe you weren't meant to go back. Maybe you meant to find new home." She set down the knife, stood, walked to where he sat and placed one enormous, calloused hand on his shoulder. The weight of it was oddly comforting. "I not ask you to choose me, Prince. I ask you to choose yourself. Real self, not perfect self. Real self that know what he want, even if what he want is stupid and impossible and make no sense. I want you," Dorian heard himself say. "I want someone who understands that broken things still work. That imperfect is more honest than perfect. I want someone who makes me feel like being myself is enough." Brecca's expression softened in a way he'd never seen. "Then you in trouble, Prince. Because I want same thing, and I don't do anything halfway." She leaned down and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't the polite kiss of court romance, all restrained passion and practiced technique. It was rough and real and tasted like the spiced tea she'd been drinking, and her tusks made it slightly awkward. And it was perfect specifically because it was imperfect. When they pulled apart, Brecca said, "Tomorrow we face court. Together, we tell them truth. They'll try to stop us. Let them try." She grinned, fierce and wild. "I am Brecca Stormfang. Killed Frost Giant at 15. Led Warband at 20. Survived things that should have killed me 10 times over. Your court want to scare me? They going to need bigger weapons." The next morning, Dorian stood before the assembled court with Brecca at his side. Every noble house was represented. Every advisor, every lord, every lady who'd ever whispered about appropriate choices and political marriages. High Steward Harlow looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. "Lords and ladies," Dorian began, his voice steadier than he felt, "I stand before you today to announce my intention to pursue a formal courtship with Brecca Stormfang of the Ashbone clan, with the hope that this courtship will lead to marriage and alliance between our peoples." The chamber erupted, not with cheers, with the kind of chaos that happens when every assumption in a room gets challenged simultaneously. Voices overlapping, accusations flying, someone, it might have been Lady Roslyn, actually shrieking. Harlow raised his hand. Silence gradually fell, reluctant and angry. "Your Highness," Harlow said, and his voice carried the weight of every advisor who'd ever tried to guide a young ruler away from disaster. "This court has served your family for generations. We have weathered wars, plagues, famines. We have survived by being wise, by being cautious, by not taking risks that could destroy everything." He paused. "This is such a risk?" "I know." "Then why?" "Because," Dorian said, and he pulled out the broken compass, held it up for everyone to see. "My grandfather gave me this compass, told me it would always point me toward my true north. It broke, and I kept it, because broken felt more honest than working. Every advisor in this court has tried to fix me, to point me in the right direction, to give me new compasses that work properly. But none of you understood that I wasn't lost because the compass broke. I was lost because I was following everyone's north except my own." He looked at Brecca. She stood tall, armor gleaming, completely unafraid. "Brecca doesn't try to fix me," Dorian continued. "She doesn't try to point me in any direction. She just asks what direction I want to go, and then she walks beside me. And if that's not what a queen should be, then maybe our definition of queen is wrong." "But the people," someone started. We'll follow a king who leads with conviction rather than a king who leads with fear. Dorian interrupted. I am not asking permission. I am telling you my decision. If the court cannot support this, if the noble houses cannot adapt, then perhaps it's time for new houses. The threat hung in the air. Dorian had never used his authority this way before. Directly, confrontationally, with the understanding that he had ultimate power and was willing to use it. You willing to risk crown for this? Harlow asked quietly. I'm willing to risk a crown I never wanted for a life I do want. Brecca touched his arm. When he looked at her, she said, My brother here. Want say something? From the back of the chamber, an orc pushed forward. Draknar Ashbone looked like his sister, but larger, older, moving with the careful deliberation of someone who thought about each action before taking it. I speak for Ashbone clan, Draknar said, his accent thick but his common tongue clear. We watch this. He gestured vaguely. Development. We worried. Is this real? Is this political? Is this prince using my sister for treaty? Everyone waited. Then I watch. I see how he look at her, how she look at him, how they both. He searched for words. Broken together, but maybe less broken because together. He turned to address the court. In orc culture we have saying, Thrak Gor Makesh. 2 weak branches together make strong rope. Alone, each break. Together, each hold. He walked to where Dorian and Rekka stood, placed one massive hand on each of their shoulders. Ashbone clan give blessing. If your people too stupid to see strength in this alliance, too blind to see how these two make each other better, then Ashbone clan alone is better ally anyway. He grinned, showing tusks that were even more impressive than Rekka's. But I think your people not stupid. Just scared. Fear make everyone stupid temporarily. The chamber was silent. Then, from the back, someone started clapping. Slowly, deliberately. Bridget the barkeep, who'd somehow gotten into the castle court session, stood in the doorway with her cleaning rag in one hand and approval on her face. About damn time someone in this castle did something interesting, she called out. I've watched this prince sit through 3 disasters. This orc woman is the first one who looked at him like he was a person instead of a title. If you lot can't see that, you're blinder than his broken compass. A few nervous laughs. Then Lady Roslyn, God's help them all, Lady Roslyn, stood up. I'll admit, she said, I thought this was madness. I thought my cousin had lost his mind, but she looked at Rekka, something like respect in her eyes. I've watched you these 3 weeks, Rekka Stormfang. You don't defer. You don't pretend. You are entirely yourself without apology. And you've made my cousin more himself than I've seen him in years. She turned to the court. Perhaps that is exactly what we need. Someone who refuses to be anything other than real. The chamber began to shift. Not toward full acceptance, gods, that would take years, but toward the kind of reluctant acknowledgement that precedes change. Harlow stood, looked at Dorian for a long moment, then sighed in the way of advisors who know they've lost the argument but will support their ruler anyway. The council, he said, will support your highness's decision, though we reserve the right to say, we told you so, if this ends poorly. Fair enough, Dorian said. The formal courtship lasted 6 months. 6 months of Rekka learning to navigate castle politics with the same tactical genius she'd applied to warfare. 6 months of Dorian learning orc customs, orc language, orc cooking, which, it turned out, was actually incredible when you got past the fact that everything was spiced with ingredients that smelled like they could kill you. 6 months of both of them learning to exist in a space that was neither fully human nor fully orc, but something new. There were fights. Gods, there were fights. About expectations, about culture, about the fact that Rekka thought royal protocol was waste of good day, and Dorian thought that showing up to diplomatic dinners in battle armor was slightly inappropriate. But there were also moments, quiet moments in the library where Rekka read orc poetry out loud and tried to explain why it sounded better in her language. Training sessions where Dorian finally landed a hit on her and she laughed, actually laughed and said, not terrible, for human, almost good. Nights where they sat on the castle walls and watched the stars and didn't need to talk because silence said everything. The wedding was complicated. Half the ceremony was human tradition, half was orc tradition, and the entire thing was a diplomatic nightmare that somehow worked. Rekka wore armor under her wedding dress because, if I wear only dress, I feel naked. Not good naked. Vulnerable naked. Dorian wore ceremonial orc war paint because, if I'm joining your clan, should look like I mean it." High Steward Harlow gave the ceremonial blessing with the expression of a man who'd seen his entire worldview change and was still processing it. Draknar cried, actually cried, big, shoulder-shaking sobs that he later claimed were allergies. "Shut up." Bridget the barkeep got drunk and told anyone who would listen. I knew from the start, saw it in how he looked at her, like she was the first real thing he'd seen in years. Lady Rosalind maintained that she'd supported it from the beginning, which was a lie, but everyone let her have it. 2 years later, Dorian stood on the same castle walls where he'd sat with Vreka during their courtship. The broken compass was in his hand. He still carried it everywhere, though now it had company, a small orc talisman that Vreka had given him, carved from bone and blessed by her clan's shaman. "Still broken?" Vreka said, walking up beside him. She'd traded her armor for more casual clothes, though she still moved like a warrior, would always move like a warrior. "Still broken," Dorian agreed, "but still honest." "Things are different now," she observed. "Court still not love me, but they not try to kill me anymore. Progress. Some of them like you. Some of them fear me less. Not same as like, but I take it. They'd had a child 3 months ago, a daughter who was somehow both human and orc, inheriting her mother's green skin and her father's dark eyes. Tiny tusks just beginning to show. The court physicians had worried. Cross-species births were rare, unpredictable. But she was healthy and loud and already showing signs of her mother's stubborn personality. "You think she'll hate us?" Dorian asked. "For bringing her into a world that doesn't know what to make of her." Vreka was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think she'll be like Broken Compass. Not point where everyone expect, point where she choose. And maybe that better." The kingdom had changed, though not as much as Dorian had hoped. There were still humans who wouldn't trade with orcs, orcs who wouldn't trust humans. There were still whispers in the court, still letters from noble houses suggesting that perhaps if the marriage produced no heirs, an annulment might be appropriate. But there were also small changes. A few mixed marriages in the capital, orc traders opening shops in human markets, human craftsmen teaching orc apprentices. A younger generation looking at Dorian and Vreka and thinking, if they can make it work, maybe we can too. Change came slow, like water carving stone, imperceptible day by day but inevitable over years. "You regret it?" Vreka asked. "Choosing this? Choosing me?" Dorian thought about it, really thought about it. About the arguments with his council, the disapproving looks that still followed them, the fact that their daughter would grow up being called half-breed by some, being too human for orcs and too orc for humans. "No," he said finally. "I regret that it's hard. I wish the world was easier, but I don't regret choosing something real over something safe." Vreka took his hand. Her palm was rough with calluses, her grip strong enough to crush his fingers if she wanted, gentle because she didn't. "Good answer, Prince. Just Dorian, she amended, who married Orc Warrior and lived mostly happily after." "Mostly? Happy ever after is lie," Vreka said. "No such thing. Is happy sometimes, hard sometimes, angry sometimes, sad sometimes. That called life. But we have life together. That enough." She was right. It was enough. The broken compass spun aimlessly in his hand, pointing nowhere and everywhere at once. But Dorian didn't need it to point anywhere specific anymore. He'd found his true north, and it turned out true north wasn't a direction at all. It was a choice. The choice to be real instead of perfect, to be broken and honest instead of whole and false, to risk everything for something that mattered instead of risking nothing for safety. The evening sun cast long shadows across the castle walls. In the nursery, their daughter began to cry, the particular cry that meant hungry, not hurt. Vreka sighed the universal sigh of parents everywhere who'd just sat down. "Your turn," Dorian said. "Was my turn last time. You have better reflexes. You have royal protocol, command servants. You're the one who said she needs to know both parents feed her equally." Vreka grumbled something in Orcish that definitely involved creative descriptions of Dorian's ancestry, but she was smiling when she said it. "Fine, but you owe me. Always do." She kissed him, still rough, still real, still slightly awkward because of the tusks, and headed toward the nursery. Dorian watched her go, this impossible woman who'd walked into a tavern 2 years ago and changed everything. Some choices destroyed you, some choices saved you, some choices did both at once. And sometimes the bravest thing a prince could do was admit that he didn't need saving at all. He just needed someone real enough to stand beside him while he figured out how to save himself. The broken compass spun in his hand. Dorian smiled and put it back in his pocket. He didn't need directions anymore. He was already home. If you're looking for a sign to choose something real over something safe, this is it. Sometimes the most unexpected connections become the most real ones. Sometimes the person who doesn't fit your expectations is exactly the person you need. What impossible choice are you afraid to make? Let me know what you thought of Dorian and Vreka's story in the comments. Have you ever chosen something real over something perfect? I read every comment. And if you want more stories about unlikely bonds and impossible love, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because real stories don't always have perfect endings, but they have honest ones, and that's better. Remember, the bravest warriors aren't those who never feel fear. They're the ones who choose love despite it.